So today we're answering the most common misconceptions and limiting beliefs that dentists have about their income. Beliefs that are quietly keeping them stuck. See, these aren't just things I've heard once or twice. These come up again and again from associates at every stage of their career. And the reason they're so dangerous is that most dentists don't even realize they're holding them. By the end of this video, my goal is simple. I want you to walk away without a single one of these beliefs still intact. So let's get into it. So the first belief we're covering is I'm not earning more because I'm not seeing enough patients. Nothing more could be further from the truth. What I see is actually that high earners, people who earn over 30K a month, tend to see less patients, but they see the right patients. If you're currently taking on everyone, then of course you need to see more patients to earn more, because your diary is filled with a bit of high ROI treatments and low ROI treatments. And possibly you're doing too many low ROI treatments. And until you've done your analysis of your diary and your work, you have no idea. And if I were to ask you now, how much is your hourly rate? How much are you actually earning? You probably don't know. And the reason is that you weren't taught to think about earning more or optimizing your diary. You were taught about excavating caries and doing a root canal treatment and doing a crown prep. Those are all clinical considerations. And what we're talking about here really isn't anything about clinical considerations. We're talking about considerations that relate to how you run your business. And I'm not just talking to practice principals here. I'm talking to associate dentists who are running their business, but they're not realizing that they're actually running their business. So as an associate dentist, you are running your business. You should be tracking your metrics so that you don't fly blind. And you need to know, where am I going? So what is my target income for next month? What did I do last month? And what is my trajectory in terms of income, in terms of efficiency, my hourly rate? Am I happy with the type of dentistry that I'm carrying out? And I speak to many dentists, and I find that about 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 say they are unhappy. Either overworked, they're unhappy with the patients they're getting, with the communication they have to carry out with patients, sometimes complaints. The environment they're working in isn't helping them clinically and financially, and they see that it's a job that is very labor intensive, a job that is very laborious. And I think we have to step back and ask ourselves, what is it that I'm currently doing? Until you name every single obstacle that you have, that you're encountering, and that sits between yourself and growth, you simply will stay stuck. Identifying barriers is the first step. Some of those barriers are inside you as a dentist. Some of the barriers are mindset. And this is what we are talking about today. You know, many of the dentists believe you need to be seeing more patients to earn more. Well, there's just a limit to how many patients you can see. You can squeeze in one patient every hour. Okay, that's fine. That gives you maybe 5 to 10% in income. But then what? Oh, well, I need to increase my prices. I need to work longer hours. That's not what's gonna bring in the big shift. And the big shift happens when you deploy the 4 to 6 important levers of growth. That's what we discuss in our Inspiring Dentist Hub, but also in all the courses and webinar series that we give. The second limiting belief that I want to discuss today is I need to do more clinical courses before I can charge more. Although charging more relates to providing patients with higher value, and part of the value that patients are getting is your expertise, and you need to be clinically confident in whatever you present to your patients. Pricing is something completely different from the clinical side that you're providing. A lot of the clinical and clinically excellent features that you provide to your patients are not seen, are intangible. Now, you can make them tangible, but the main factor of being able to charge more relates to identifying all the little value items that I give to the patient. So sometimes patients are willing to pay more for weekend visits. Other times they're willing to pay more for early access to your practice. Let's say they work 8 to 8 and they can only make it at 7 a.m. All right, you giving them access to your practice, to see them for a routine checkup or a filling or for a crown prep, they will value that and they will be happy to pay more for it. Charging more has nothing to do with your clinical skill. Yes, you need a certain clinical skill to be able to justify the fees that you charge. Let's say you're just beginning in terms of placing implants, and the range in the area where you work is anything between 3,000 and 5,000. When you're just beginning your implant journey, you can't be charging the highest. However, if you're confident in your clinical work, there's no harm in charging accordingly. That shows the patient also that you value your time. And we talk about this at length in terms of pricing, psychology, and the price elasticity of demand. And luxury branding is an important element in dentistry, which hasn't really been highlighted enough. So clinical courses are not necessary if you have a certain set of skills that you know are providing value to your patients. And as I said, value can be given in many different ways to your patients. It's not just the clinical side of things. Sometimes the early access, some other times it's the lounge feel that your patients get when they're sitting in the waiting room, when it's a modern practice with a lot of technology. Technology increases your value. We have to make sure our clinical excellence at least matches or exceeds the perceived value. And if perceived value is great, but our clinical excellence isn't, then there's that mismatch. So yes, we need to increase our clinical excellence, but perceived value is something else. And in fact, we held a webinar. You can find this on the Inspiring Dentist Hub. So patients in my area just won't pay for high value treatment. To those who really hold this belief, I say the patient who arrived at your practice arrived in a car, most likely. What's the value of that car? I am absolutely certain that the value of that car is a multiple of the value of the high value treatment that you're trying to provide for your patient. Let me give you an example. Patient arrives in a Toyota Camry. The price in euros or in US dollars is roughly maybe 30,000. You won't be selling patients a 30,000 high value treatment. You want them to pay for a 1,500 crown. The patient is willing to pay 30,000 for a car. They live in a house. Most likely they have a mortgage. They have paid 200, 500, 600, 700,000, maybe $1 million. Now they come to your practice and all of a sudden they don't have the money? No, it's they don't see the value. It's because they don't prioritize the treatment. And it's about showing the patient the problem they have is significant, sometimes even life-changing. Sometimes patients say to me, you just told me I have an infection. My dentist told me I have an infection and they referred you to me. Why do I need this to be treated? I'm not in pain. It's important to go back to basics. So we sit down, me and the patient, and we both look at the same screen. And I put the x-ray up and I say, you're not in pain, right? I see on the x-ray, I see an amalgam filling. I see you have a crown here. Oh, you still have a wisdom tooth impacted. See it, look over there. And those are just observations. And I lead by mentioning facts. And the reason I do that is to establish that I am an evidence-based dentist. And also I'm putting everything in context so that the patient understands that, yes, okay, those are my teeth. Yes, I had some fillings over there. And look at your jawbone. Look what's happening there, right? See that dark area? That's bone loss. And immediately people are like, why is there bone loss? It's like, well, actually your body is doing this. It's a sign of inflammation. It's a sign that your body is not happy with this. What is the body unhappy about? If we look at the location of the bone loss, we may be able to understand why the body is unhappy. See, in this case, it's around the root tips. And although you may not be in pain, but your body is busy trying to fight something. And it moved the battleground against that threat to the root tip area. And it means your body cannot deal with the internal threat. So this is the context we talk about. We talk about bacteria, we talk about inflammation, we talk about bone loss. Those are all health implications. And then the patient says, okay, I understand I have all this. What would your recommendation be? And then I would say, well, first of all, before I give you my recommendation, the options are extract and consider implant, or root canal treat with an estimated success rate of X%. And my recommendation would be, in this case, for example, to try and save the tooth. In other cases, I would say, well, this tooth doesn't look great, prognosis is poor. Then sometimes patients tell me, can I wait? Quite often I say to them, this didn't start yesterday, right? You had this for over 2 years probably. In fact, if we go back in your x-rays, well, look at this. Yeah, maybe you had this 2 years ago, but it will potentially grow. When you're on holiday, it may flare up. Making it real for people will actually provide them with that context that this may have an impact on their everyday lives. And one thing I tell them is, this is a hidden infection. If you had this same infection on your hand, you would go to the GP and they would give you some cream or whatever, and then it doesn't heal, and then you would go back, right? Because you can see it. It doesn't hurt, but you can see that there's a lump. In this case, you can't see it. It's inside the bone, but it's there. It's about getting the patient educated, getting the patient on board to understand that there is a high value in the high value treatment that you're providing, and patients will pay. It's bridging that gap between perceived value and the value that you actually see and the patient doesn't see. The better you are able to do that, the greater your case acceptance will be. Even in areas where you might say patients just won't pay for high value treatment. You'll be surprised. I speak to implantologists who work areas with a very low economic demographics. People come in with bags full of cash to pay them. Where does that money come from? God knows. I don't know. People have money and they will pay for a service or a product when they see the value for it. So next is, I don't want to come across as salesy when I present treatment plans. So this one talks about how I come across as a dentist when I talk to patients. I think we have to realize that we are selling. We are selling our services whether we like it or not. Not wanting to come over as salesy is something that is within us. That has nothing to do with presenting a treatment plan to patients. The price itself attached to your treatment is one element. Another element is the actual value of the treatment that you're providing. So the price is an investment into this product that you're selling or the service that you're selling. Let's say you want to provide a patient with an all-on-6 implant solution. That will cost them £20,000. Before getting to the £20,000, there are many steps. First of all, it's about highlighting what is actually the problem. And I made a video how to present and how to communicate treatment plans. So first, present the problem. The problem is that you have 5 teeth left in your upper jaw and you don't have the bite support. You can't chew the food. The remaining teeth are all increasingly mobile. They're affected by periodontal disease. Of course, we're gonna bring it to the patient in layman's terms. Overall, the prognosis is poor. What is a solution? Well, the solution is we can make you another denture, but if you want something fixed, you need implants. And implants will provide you with a stable solution so that you can eat with higher levels of comfort. And this is the price. Once you state the fee or the price or the investment, frame it whatever you like, leave the patient to absorb the impact of what you just said and let them process it. So I've developed the impact human-centered framework for case acceptance. There are very little elements where you will need to be salesy because the overall objective is that we're presenting a treatment plan that gives the patient full freedom to decide whichever treatment they want, right? And if they need more time to think about it, that's reasonable. And they need to go home and think about it. And then a member of your team can follow up. So there is no pressure. And I am very much in our case acceptance mastery courses is no pressure tactics. Yes, there is some objection handling, but objection handling not to try and get the sale anyway. It's about helping the patient. And yes, helping the patient actually quite often means getting them to agree to a treatment because that's in their best interest, not because you want to sell more. See, the moment psychologically you want to sell more, you'll feel that you don't want to come across as salesy. But if you change the way you look at the whole process and you put the patient at the center of what you do, you're presenting it as if you're presenting it to a family member. And then it doesn't matter because you're not selling. You're serving the patient with dental care and you're trying to improve their oral health care. Another one is, I'm an associate. I don't have control over my income. And to that, I answer that even practice owners have limitations, restrictions around how much they can earn. So every person working in dentistry has a cap on their earning potential. Now you can change that, changing the environment you work in, changing the way you work in, changing the fee you're asking for your services, changing your treatment mix, branding yourself as an expert in a certain area, and working on your communication skills, getting better at converting more treatment plans. The idea is that as an associate, I don't have control over my income. To that, I say, well, some associates are on 4 or 5K or 10K, and some other associates are on 30K, and I'm on 55, 60K. In fact, I recently spoke to a dentist. We did a one-to-one and he was on 30K a month, which was already really good. Gave him some tips on how to grow his income. Roughly about 5 months later, he messages me and says, I'm now on 54K a month. And previously, he thought 30K was the max. I won't be able to do more than 30K. Within a couple of months, he nearly doubled his income. Another dentist attended our webinar series with Dr. Rana Al-Falaki on the associate transformation. And within 3 months, he sends me a message saying that he has tripled his income. And this dentist isn't even in the UK, he's in the Middle East. It's very important to recognize that the principles that we teach are practical, can be implemented in every setting in the world, even in settings where it's heavily government funded and regulated. Anyone saying, I don't have control over my income? Well, I hope I've just proven to you that whatever your income currently is, you have the ability to double or triple it. If you're on 30K, you can double it. If you're on 10K, you can triple or quadruple it easily. The next one is 30K a month is only possible if you own a practice. Well, I don't own a practice, and many dentists I speak with and actually coach and mentor, we see the changes happen. I just spoke about dentists who within a couple of months were able to triple or double their income. 30K a month is definitely not an exception. And I speak to dentists and dental practice owners who quite frankly say to me, Yasser, 30K, no way. That's out of the question. It's very difficult to achieve. One colleague of mine even said to me that, you're basically making up these numbers. In fact, I speak to so many dentists that I see the average is 10 to 15K. Usually those are general dentists still doing a lot of low ROI treatments. Those dentists who differentiate and focus on 1 or 2 or maybe 3 treatment types. Let me give you an example. So you can focus on 3 different treatment types if you're surgically great at what you do and you have surgical training. So you can do wisdom tooth extractions, you can do implants, and you can do surgical perio. You can combine those 3, and if there is high demand for them, you have passion for this, patients are willing to pay a premium for those 3 services, all you need to do is you can work at 3-4 different practices to fill your diaries. You limit your supply, and you can increase your fees and see how your income grows naturally without doing crazy, magical stuff. Another one is, I'm already working 5 days a week. There's no way to earn more without burning out. Yes, that's assuming that you have to work longer hours. But I've just said that you don't need to work longer hours. And in fact, I see 4 or 5 patients a day. Sometimes I see 6 or 7 patients a day, and that's quite a busy day. You probably, when you're looking at this, you're probably making 10K, 15K a month, and you're seeing 30 patients a day, or 40 or 50 patients a day. And that's way too much because you've opened the doors to every single patient out there. You're doing a lot of low ROI treatments. Another one is, my principal decides what I earn. There's nothing I can do about it. In a way, your principal can have a say about what you earn. And your principal, I don't think, minds that you earn more, because most dentists work on a compensation structure where you get a percentage of gross revenue. So if you earn more, that means the practice is making more. From my experience as a practice owner of multiple practices, and I employed over 40 associate dentists, and I can tell you that the highest value associates, the ones that I really wanted to keep, were the ones that were grossing a lot. And the ones that were really costing me money, literally costing me money, really dentists who were maybe averaging 1,200 a day, 800 a day. This was in Holland, so it was euros. They were literally costing me money. Running a dental practice, it costs roughly about 15 to 18K a month to just run that surgery that the dentist is in. So I need that dentist to make every month roughly about 25, 30K to just break even. And unfortunately, many dentists think, I want to provide low-cost dentistry and I want to have, an hour and a half of lunch, and I want an easy diary. I want half an hour or 45 minutes for a checkup. That doesn't work if your checkups are only 20 pounds. Things have to make sense economically. You're running a dental practice operation. So whatever makes sense to you may not make sense to the practice principal. So the practice principal will only intervene in cases where income levels drop. And there's a lot you can do about your income levels. It's about time you take ownership of it, just like myself and many other associates on our programs have done. Patients don't trust young dentists with big treatment plans. Yes, I get that. And there is some element of truth, because you need to establish yourself as an authority. And if you're a young dentist, you just graduated, or you're 2 years in, then it's difficult to present big treatment plans. Now, there are several ways of dealing with this. One is by teaming up with a senior partner, so a senior dentist. In that way, you're kind of increasing your sense of credibility. You're increasing the levels of authority. During the treatment plan presentation, I would say to the patient, look, do you mind if I get in a senior dentist to just look at your teeth, and without me saying anything, look at your teeth and present a treatment plan? And they may present a completely different treatment plan, and that's perfectly fine, right? And quite often we would have, a debate about this treatment plan. I would say, why don't we do a bridge here? And then he says, no, but look at this pillar, it has some bone loss. And I say, well, the span isn't much, and there's enough stability. So all of this is happening in front of the patient. Patients love it. And while you're making a case for your treatment plan, they see the senior dentist having trust in you. That increases trust levels. And they know that if you run into problems, you have a backup. Surrounding yourselves with the right colleagues helps. And it helped me massively. I learned so much from senior dentists. And you may say, well, the senior dentists in my practice, their dentistry is very different to mine. I'm forward thinking, and they do the family dentistry. Doesn't matter. They bring in a wealth of experience. And clinically, as a young dentist, you need that support. So that's one way of, presenting big treatment plans. There are many ways. If you have any doubts, I would definitely recommend sign up to one of our courses or sign up to the Inspiring Dentist Hub There's so many ways of increasing your credibility as a dentist and your sense of authority. Another limiting belief is, I've been doing this for years and my income hasn't changed. It's just the way it is. It's very unfortunate that you've kind of settled for this and that you've given up. And I would really recommend, don't give up, right? Always stay looking for opportunities for growth, right? And there's a reason you're watching this video, and that's because you want to grow, right? There is an aspiration inside you that you want to do something with your dental career that is slightly different to what you've been doing. And this is your opportunity. If you've enjoyed this video, you can sign up to our Inspiring Dentist Hub. It's a very low-cost way of getting on the train of growth. And if you want access to the 7-day free trial, check out the link in the description.